Okay, so a few people messaged me about these sash windows the last few days, asking questions. How do I do this? What do I use for that? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to try and little video, show you what I'm doing, and also answer a few of those questions whilst we're here. So these are actually side lights. These aren't the sashes. These are the kind of the side bits. If you imagine all of that, these are fixed, and then you've got the window pit part in the middle. So just letting extra light, and these are fixed into the frames. These ones are screwed in through the glazing rebates into the frames or the muntins, depending on what side they're on, and they don't move. They're just secured in place. But the process is exactly the same. Actually, with these, the build is the same, and because actually, it's kind of if anyone's interested, these could actually have been made to open in here as well, because these aren't on boxes. They've got spiral counterbalances in. If the original manufacturer or client had chosen, they could have just machined all the way up there, and they could have had opening side lights as well, which you might see on the Fizz factory one day. Fingers crossed, but that's another story. Anyway, back to these. So what I've done is I've removed these effectively in the same way as I would an upper or a lower sash. I'm already part of the way through this, but I'll kind of get you up to speed. First things first, I sand them down. These I've sanded an awful lot more than I normally would. And the reason I've done that, you can just see on here, see this line across here. There was a really kind of pronounced raised load of paint all the way from top to bottom on both sides of both side lights for years of paint. So I've taken those off and I've just sanded it all the way down, and then I just went down to the original wood. When you're doing these repairs, particularly with the resin, it is really important to sand all the paint away from the surrounding areas. To be honest, that probably shouldn't be there, but that's actually, I think that's in the original thing, so I'll probably chisel that out. Anyway, so it's really important to remove all the paint, because you don't want the resin sticking to the paint. When the paint flakes off, the resin will come with it and you won't get a good bond. So that's the first job, sand it all off. Because I've taken the glazing out of these, obviously I've got to remove all the loose putty, any and all loose putty, and then what I do is I sand the rebates ready for undercoating, which will happen later. The next thing I do is then start removing all the flaky rot from these areas, and I use currently I'm using one of these. It's a cordless die grinder. This is the Makita one. The only reason I'm using Makita, and a lot of people know I'm a big cordless Hikoki fan. Hikoki don't make one of these, they only make a corded version. Previously to that, I used a Trend T4 router, because it's basically take that section out of the middle, move the collet right down, and that's basically what you've got. But there inside is, this one's a teardrop, but you get various shapes. There's another one over here. This might be another teardrop actually. Oh no, this one's a ball nose one, but you can get spheres and all sorts of shapes on there. That's where I got that one from. They're not expensive, they don't last forever. The reason I like using these is you can hit nails, you can hit screws, you can hit those horrible corrugated metal fastener things, and it really doesn't matter. If you did that with all hand tools, then you're going to trash all your hand tools. If you do it with like an oscillating tool blade, you trash those blades straight away, particularly when they're stainless like these. So because these are really for metal, they churn up the wood beautifully, and it really does make light work of that. And because you've got a decent array, you can get into teeny little places. Let me show you if I hold that up. So in here I've taken out all where the water's got in behind the glazing and started rotting that bottom rail. I can dig all that out, get back to fresh wood, and repair it. This one's had the glazing bar re-glued. It got a nasty split in it, so I just eased it out gently, split the glazing bar completely, and re-glued it in place. Save trying to rebuild one with resin. Once I've got all the rot out, and actually by taking off all all this paintwork, you can actually see a lot better where the rot goes to. Once that's all out, the next job is to kind of take a little breath, clean up the mess, and work out how we're going to rebuild it. That's when I start to kind of make a plan. So on this part, the plan is to, because I've got so much wood missing, I'm going to shutter it with these bits of plastic. Oop, put that in there. That didn't work. Come on, shutter that in place like that, something like that. That allows me to rebuild this corner and start working on that. Because I've got this outside corner as well, what I'm actually going to do on here, I've just used a router in there just to give me a clean cut. I think it's this one. Yeah, so I'm going to stick a piece of timber in there because this has got a, you can see in here, it's got a drip bead integral with the bottom rail that's been machined in after, as has this one. It just stops the water ingressing. So I'm going to rebuild the majority of that with wood. So I've cut splice for that side. Yeah, splice for this side, whoops. And then one for this side. Note how that's, actually, I bet they're the other way around. I bet they fit better. Yeah, look at that. It's slightly oversized, but not too much. And then this piece should go in there. So I know with this one, timber on the corners, shuttering up, I rebuild the rest with resin. These gets glued in place with the resin, and then once it's all gone off, then I can sand all that. Done the same on this side with my, whoop, that one's going to go in there. That one's going to go completely over the top of that because there was so much rot. See how much thinner that is for the rest of the bit. So that'll go on there, build that up. And then I've got a teeny little piece in there. So the wood will finish that way. Wood will finish that way, and hopefully it will give it a lot more consistent finish to if it was just all resin. Because the resin and the wood, they don't paint quite the same. You don't get quite the same texture until you've got loads and loads of paint on there. So I do prefer, where possible, to rebuild with timber splices. Gives it a nicer look. Gives you the ability to rebuild it down the road as well when and if that rots, and it's just a bit more, it looks nice, I think. Plus this is a lot cheaper than the resin is. So that's where I'm at. Then I'll build up all my parts, cut those to size, and then I've got a plan. The next step is to take all my little blocks for that one and the blocks for this one, and if you could just note, I've scribbled on bits. They're the parts that are scribbled on, are the bits that will come into contact with the window, and then the whole lot where I'm going to repair and put any resin. You can see it's already on here. You might have wondered what it is, with what's called dry fix, and it is this stuff's been going off a little while. It's kind of a pre-resin. It's a bit of a kind of a gluey. It's not a wood hardener, but what it does is it causes the epoxy resin that I use to build and to glue to fix. It's a two-part. It gets mixed up in the little paper cups. It gets put on there. That will then get thrown out, and anything that's going to be in contact with the resin gets coated in it. And then I leave that for, you know, quarter of an hour, 45 minutes, depending on the weather. It is quite warm today, and I am right up in the very upper limits, 35 degrees of this stuff. This will remain open for about 24 hours. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wait a few hours for the temperature to drop, so I'm well within my 35 degrees, because the resin I use works from 0 to 35 degrees Celsius. So now I'm ready to start resining. I will come back once it's all done. I'll talk you through what I've done.